this is going to be start to finish my sketching, inking, and coloring digital process in Procreate App. We're just jumping right in here. I like to start out really small. They call them thumbnails. The purpose of a thumbnail is to force you to focus on the overall shape. The problem with drawing big when you first start out drawing on a big page is you get lost in the details real fast, and then before you know it, the overall shape doesn't even look good. So an important thing to me that I'm learning now is to focus more on the shape before I get too much into the details. I think that was one of my big problems early on, was just diving into the details too fast. You want to be able to squint your eyes, or at that split second when you see that image, the shape is what comes across, and you want that to be interesting. And now that I like the shape, I'm gonna blow it up and then refine it from there. So I made the opacity lower on the red. The red is really, my focus is to get the general shapes and proportions right. Now in the blue, I'm getting a little bit more detailed with the line. Like the line, how the line is tells such a lot about the texture of that thing. So now I can focus a little bit on texture and less about shape. And I'm gonna do this, I might go back and forth a couple of times on that sketch before I start inking. It just gives me more chances to play with the style a little bit, and I'm looking at different qualities of the line with each revision pass. So now I'm doing a little bit of shading to see how the lighting works. Okay, we're gonna do another pass here. So this next pass now is for me to get a little bit more of a caricature. So the caricature is like, that's where your style can come into play more. Instead of just drawing exactly one-to-one what that dog looks like, now I'm making the head smaller here so that the nose and mouth appear bigger, just so it's kind of like a little bit more of a fisheye look. So yeah, this pass is morphing the proportions a little bit, like a little exaggeration of the proportions. Shrinking the ears a little bit more. So this brush I'm using, this is just the 6B, the default 6B pencil in Procreate. I really like this tool. I use it at like the largest setting, just so that just to keep me from getting too detailed. And so I'm using bigger lines, and then you can turn that sideways and do some pretty fast shading. So here I'm doing a little bit of shading, just so that when I want to work out the lighting issues before I start painting in multiple colors. I want to get the lighting worked out. When you start doing too much in one step, like doing colors and lighting, it just gets overwhelming, for me at least. So I'm trying to work out what they call values. So the values, how dark is it, how light is it? So trying to get all the shading in so I don't have to think about that when I move to colors. This is kind of the fun part for me. The shaping and all that, that's more like work. The shading is more fun for me, so I like getting carried away with that. Alright, so we're moving on to inking now, and I'm putting a new layer down, bringing the opacity down of the red, and I use the default script brush, which is in the calligraphy set. I really like this brush. It gives me a really wide variety of pressure sizes. So for me, I like the variation in line size. Like, to me, that's interesting. it gives the art a little bit more style, and you can suggest a lot of texture with the variation of line style. So you can see I use it in a way that it kind of starts and ends thin, and it's like a thicker line in the middle, and that's just using the pressure. One thing I wanted to talk about was being able to live with mistakes or imperfections. Perfectionism is like, to me, it's like a disease, kind of like you have to get over that. And you have to get over that by recognizing the source of where that comes from. The source for me was not having confidence in my art, and then being afraid of being judged by other artists. Because like people who aren't artists that are looking at your work, they never see the mistakes. They either like it or they don't. Other artists might judge artists like, oh, they didn't render this right, this proportion's wrong. So there is some technical skills you have to learn, but it's all within reason. And if you are too much a perfectionist about your work, then you're never going to get anything done. And quality comes out of quantity. Like, you have to just produce a lot of work to get good. So if you're too much of a perfectionist about one thing, you might only end up producing 10 pieces of work in a month or in a year or in a week, whatever it is, whatever that number is. You could and should be producing more work, because the more you do, the better you get. The other thing about mistakes and imperfections is that really that kind of what defines style in a way. Like not anyone, but people, you can get good at drawing a photorealistic dog, but to make it your own, and every artist struggles with this, I am also myself, but how do you make it your own so that it's your own style? And so that's something everyone's exploring, I think. And that style comes out of imperfections in your work and mistakes. Sometimes they're meant to be imperfections, and sometimes it's just how it is. All right, so we are moving on to coloring now, and I use a variety of brushes. I'm still don't even know all of the Procreate brushes, but this one is the soft pastel brush in the sketching set. And what I like about this one is it just gives you, it's like a quick way to fill in a lot of space, and also gives you like a lot of good pressure sensitive shading. I like working off of a gray background, you'll notice, so it gives me, it's like a neutral starting point, so that I could add and paint white onto it. Because if I started on a white background, then I couldn't paint whites, right? So I always start on a neutral gray. Thanks for watching. That's all I got. Hope you enjoyed it. Like, subscribe, and all that. See you next time.